talk this week, I want to speak about and to God-fearers and their part in the covenant. For those of you who are not familiar with the term, let me just briefly explain. In ancient times, a God-fearer was any non-Jew who followed Jewish customs and traditions and did their best to keep Torah while not going through full conversion. They attached themselves to Jewish communities and lived among them, yet retained their Gentile identities. At this point, we would do well to remember that Gentiles have walked alongside Israelites right from the start. After all, Exodus 12:38 records that a mixed multitude of foreigners left Egypt with the Israelites. In the early Christian centuries, however, it became difficult for Gentiles who wanted to follow a Jewish way of life to do so, for fear of persecution. It became more expedient to forbid non-Jews to live a Jewish lifestyle. As a result, modern Rabbinic Judaism does not accept the status of God-fearers. The good news is that we do. Because we follow the biblical Israelite religion, Talmidi's recognize Torah-observant Gentiles who worship Adonai. I now just want to look briefly at the issue of Noachides. What was a necessity in those early centuries eventually became rabbinic law. You either fully convert and become Jewish, or you merely live according to the 7 laws of Noah. These are 7 laws that the early rabbis decided upon, which must be followed by a Gentile in order to be called righteous among the nations. In practice, it's a way of holding non-Jews at arm's length, making the Israelite religion about race rather than a way of life in the service of Adonai. There are some, mostly among the Orthodox community, who believe that it is actually a sin for a non-Jew to study Torah. There are also some fundamentalists among the Orthodox who see the term Jewish as being a racial description and have voiced their intention to keep records of converts and their descendants, claiming they will never be real Jews. These attitudes beg the following questions. If a Gentile does not feel Jewish but wishes to worship Adonai exclusively, what religion are they supposed to follow? If a Gentile feels an overwhelming calling to follow the customs and traditions of Israel, but is unable to go through full conversion for whatever reason, where are they supposed to go? You see, when you convert to the Israelite faith, you are not only changing your religion, in a sense, you are also changing your ethnicity and your cultural identity. This is a huge step to take psychologically, and some just can't manage it. It is really difficult to say I am no longer French or Chinese or Zulu or Indian or whatever. I am a Hebrew, an Israelite. If that step cannot be made psychologically, then in Rabbinic Judaism the answer is live as a Noachide, but don't follow Torah. Now, for a lot of so-called Noachides, this just isn't enough. Something feels somehow missing. So how do we Talmidis resolve this? When we need answers, we turn not to human beings, but to God. God said through the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 56:3, "Let no foreigner who has bound themselves to Adonai say, Adonai will surely exclude me from his people." Now Isaiah's prophecy is quite explicit. It refers to someone who is not of Israelite descent, but has bound themselves to Adonai by adhering to the covenant and following the commandments of Torah. This passage is in fact referring to those Gentiles who, in later centuries, became known as God-fearers. In Hebrew, they are called Yirei Elohim, which literally means those who revere God in awe. Rabbinic Judaism has revoked and canceled the status of the God-fearer, so that you are either a Jew or you are not. There is no in-between. Talmidaism, on the other hand, which is based on the Israelite religion as practiced in the land of Israel, does acknowledge the status of the God-fearer. Although God-fearers are not Israelites, they are considered an integral part of the whole assembly of Israel, Kol Kahal Yisrael. If you look in the book of Joshua, chapter 8, verses 33 and 35, it describes how resident foreigners stood alongside native-born Israelites around the Ark of the Covenant when the covenant was renewed. This happened once the whole assembly of Israel stood for the first time in the land of Canaan. Talmidaism is a faith that recognizes the community of the whole assembly of Israel. Kol Kahal Yisrael. As it says in the book of Joshua, resident foreigners were included when the assembly of Israel first stood in the land and reaffirmed their loyalty to Adonai. Now we come to the issue of the covenant. Unfortunately, we have Paul of Tarsus to thank for the confusion on the covenant and the relation of Gentiles to it. He built up this complicated and false theology to justify why Gentiles who didn't observe Torah needed to be included. Basically, the covenant can be summarized as this. If Israel will worship Adonai alone, keeping his laws and statutes forever, then Adonai will give us the land of Canaan forever, and preserve us as a people and a nation forever. This is mostly from Genesis chapter 17, but can also be found in chapters 13 and 15 of Genesis 2. Our community recognizes the valuable contribution that God-fearers can make to Jewish life. God-fearers follow the covenant out of choice, whereas Israelites follow the covenant out of obligation. Paul confused the issue by thinking that the covenant and circumcision were about salvation. They're not. For men, the issue of circumcision has nothing to do with salvation. What circumcision does is commit him and his descendants to the land of Israel. Only a circumcised man can inherit land in Israel. That's all. And all that full conversion does is turn your choice into an obligation and commit you and your descendants to the land of Israel. It really is that simple. If you read Deuteronomy verses 9 to 14, it shows that the covenant was sworn not only with native-born Israelites, but also with the foreigners residing among them. That's Deuteronomy chapter 29, verses 9 to 14. Those of you listening to me now who are God-fearers should never feel that you are excluded from the covenant. Because when Adonai cut the covenant with the house of Israel, resident foreigners back then represented you, just as the descendants of Jacob living today were represented back then by the Israelites. Ignore what the Orthodox rabbis say. You who are God-fearers have symbolic ancestors amongst the Gerim who stood 3,500 years ago on the plains of Moab together with the Israelites. You are a part of the assembly of Israel, and your ancient representatives were included in the covenant on your behalf. Gentiles who are Torah-observant are a historical part of the assembly of Israel that journeyed with Israel every step of the way, and were deliberately listed as taking part in the cutting of the covenant. If you have not undergone full conversion, for whatever reason, but see yourself as a God-fearer, then you are a part of the covenant. You have God's word on that. So don't listen to those narrow-minded teachers who say you have no part in the assembly of Israel. Don't listen to the rulings of the ancient rabbis, but rather to the teachings of Adonai, who says in Isaiah 56:6, foreigners who bind themselves to Adonai to serve him, to love the name of Adonai, and to worship him, all who keep the Sabbath without desecrating it, and who hold fast to my covenant, these I will bring to my holy mountain and give them joy in my house of prayer. Adonai, our great teacher, has welcomed God-fearers as part of the assembly of Israel. And we as Talmidis shall do and observe the same as what Adonai our God has told us to do. Therefore we, the Talmidi community, raise a banner to the nations, to the four corners of the earth, and make this call. Those among you who love Adonai and are interested in living a Jewish way of life, but have previously been rejected and turned away for not being Jewish, come with us to the holy mountain and find joy with us in God's house of prayer. Once again, thank you for listening, and I hope you will come back next time to hear more good news from God's kingdom.